Is that my cue to start? Yep. Jacqueline, we call this meeting to order, so up to it, everyone.
Yeah.
Mostly you. And thank you. Good evening. Regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being audio and video recorded. My name is Josh Prince. I'm chair of the Programs and Services Committee. I'm a counselor at large from Ward 4. At the start of the meeting, we also have the vice chair of the committee, from Ward 5, Councilor Bill Humphrey, joining us online, as well as Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8 joining us online. In the room, we have Councilor John Oliver and Councilor Julia Malachy. I think we're expecting one more councilor tonight. We're also joined in the room by Councilor Susan Albright. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's get started. First item on our agenda is item 26-24. This is the discussion of possible home rule petition regarding moving Newton's municipal elections to even years along with federal and state elections. This was docketed by President Albright. Please. Sorry, former President Albright. And I know that the clerk of the council, Pat Moore, is here to perhaps help discuss this item as well. Okay. So by way of background, those of you who have been elected to the city council know that you got elected in an even year, an odd year. And state elections are in even years. So alternates between municipal and state elections. Councilor Albright was interested in potentially what would it take to align the municipal election schedule with that of the state. And we are joined by Councilor Lyle Baker, member of the Programs and Services, the most important member of the Programs and Services Committee.
Well, you said I was the most important.
Until Councilor Baker got here.
Oh,
See how it rolls. I hope you enjoy your moment in the sun.
So shall I start?
Please.
Okay, so I think I attached, I'm not sure that it got distributed, but Globe editorial, maybe not. It came out just after the election in November.
I don't think so.
Okay, so the Globe wrote an editorial, which I have a copy of, and I can give it to Jacqueline, she can distribute it. Right after the November election, which was an odd year election, and just school committee and just city council, no mayor, no nothing beyond that. Implored cities and towns, please think about switching our municipal elections to even year elections. So I read it with interest, and then the next day, my neighbor, who happens to be a poll worker, we were out walking our dogs together at 6:30 in the morning, and he said, I hope you're gonna take up that Globe editorial. So I thought, okay, let's docket something and have a discussion with this committee and see if you guys are interested in pursuing. So what I have found so far is I talked to the Collins Center to see what they thought about it. And
Do you know who the Collins Center is?
UMass Boston. Yeah.
UMass Boston, yeah.
I spoke with the head of it, and although he promised to send me some things which he didn't send yet, he told me that there are some other cities that are interested in doing this, Cambridge being one, and I can't remember what the others were. He said that the Secretary of State is not in favor of doing this. He would like to keep it the way it is.
That's stunning. The
Yeah.
Secretary of State's interested in maintaining the status quo.
Yeah,
and not
isn't that a shock?
changing
and
it.
not putting said back on there. Yeah.
So there's a ton of research, and I did talk to one of the authors of the Globe editorial was Peter, his name is Peter Levine, is the assistant dean at the Tisch College at Tufts. And I did speak with him today, and he's done some national research that shows that municipal elections on the off years are terribly. And Carol has some data that she's gonna share with us, but it's not just Newton, it's all over the country, it's that way.
In terms of turnout.
In terms of turnout, terrible turnout, and not representative of the community at large. It turns out that New York just recently signed a law, state law, that all municipal elections will be on even years. And I guess California has done the same thing.
And Oregon.
And some other cities.
Parts of Colorado.
Parts of Boulder, Colorado, and several other cities in Colorado. A statewide effort in Washington State did just recently fail. but most of the others that they've tried to do in the past. I brought a lot of articles with me that I will leave with Jacqueline to distribute to everybody. And the research is pretty clear that the two important things, and the turnout is very low, and turnout is not representative of the community at large in these off-year elections. And Carol, you can talk about the cost savings and also the data that we have in.
Sure, Jacqueline, if you could share, I have just some numbers that are printed up, so see if we can make it as big as possible, because I tried to get, you know, a full 4-year kind of history, so you can see, so the blue line is the turnout. The green bar is, we always hold around 60,000 in registered voters. You know, sometimes it dips a little bit, it gets a little higher, but it stays around 60,000. The orange bar, that's our turnout. That's the number of ballots cast. So if you can go down, everyone can see in 2020, you can see where the presidential state election is from November of 2020. I mean, that's the highest one we always will receive. And on the side too are the numbers. So it's easier to read that way. But you can see in the pink, that's the state primaries, the presidential primary and elections. They're typically, let's not talk about the last one in March. That was a unprecedented low turnout for the presidential primary. But typically it's over 50%. I mean, on average, I think all the time. Now, when you look at the gray lines, on the side, the numbers, those are our municipal elections. And they are typically under 30%, sometimes as low as 17. I think the highest was 33% in a special election, which was the budget override. So that's our turnout. If you go to the next slide, you can see, so this is an average cost. This is with, because we choose to have vote by mail for Newton, we send out vote by mail applications at the beginning of the year. With 60,000 registered voters, vote by mail, and 5 days of early voting, average out, it costs around $240,000. So that's one election, that's a local election. If we piggybacked on a state election, we are already staffing an election. We're already paying for the police officers, the election workers, the mailings, the postage. The only thing that would be extra in that, it would be a little bit more hectic, I understand that. We would have to pay for our own printing of a ballot. But it can go in with the other ballots when we vote by mail. So again, we wouldn't be changing that process. We would just be adding a little bit more. So when I think of what would happen if we consolidated, we would be saving probably close to $210,000 on each election, because we're already using the staff, we're already using the other departments to set up the polling locations. We're already printing posters. That being said, I mean, I don't know what the state would do, but we could use their vote by mail applications. I believe everyone got a postcard in the beginning of this year. That was from the state. If somebody checked off all elections, we could, in theory, use that checkoff, meaning you're also meaning a local election as well. I mean, that is something that we would flesh out with the state if this ever came to fruition. But this is just an overview on the average costs of an election for local. It's around 240.
And did I hear you right? We would save 210 of that 240? So we'd be spending 30 as opposed to.
Right, because we would be moving it, we're already spending it for the state election, so we're already going to be, so it would be removing that 1 year, which is for our local elections. The primary, if it's not citywide, it is, if it was, I think, 2 wards, of course, it would be considerably less, but that local election costs us $240,000. So if we moved it to the state,
right,
we would only be paying for printing that ballot extra when you think of it.
Councilor Baker.
So I appreciate the effort and thought that's gone into this,
Sure.
and I vigorously. And I'll tell you why. I think
It's
that
such a nice way to.
That's why he's the most valuable player.
Just want you to know I could test you. We'll get into that.
but I think that the tradition of local government in Massachusetts has been I think one of its great strengths of having off-year elections where you have nonpartisan candidates. And other states have had local government being run with, on a partisan basis. And I think one of the great strengths of Massachusetts is the fact that all of our local elections are indeed nonpartisan and they're off year. And you're not marbled into the other situation. It can be done. I don't say it can't be done. And the cost savings are certainly there. So I don't discount those at all. But I think the value of having a locally focused election cycle is really an important part of our municipal tradition. And certainly I think has made, in my experience, Newton government a more congenial and responsive body than I think we've seen at other levels of government, to be candid. So I'm not eager to trade into the state election system for an economy of even these significant numbers. And the other aspect, I think, is that we have a problem of also visibility. At least while the turnout is lower, the local elections are run as the local matter, and that's what's everybody's focus. If you're marbled into the state and the federal election, you're going to be really a down ballot piece of the puzzle, and you may have a separate ballot. And I know the logistics of that are possible, and we've done it in the past. But I think that the drawbacks outweigh the benefits. So, all respect, I will propose this item.
Councilor Oliver.
Sorry, so with this, have you thought through far enough, and it's totally okay if you haven't, but would this impact the area council balloting?
I mean, it would-
think, or-
I would just move it to the same year as well. I mean, it would be kind of, you can't cut your term short. I know that. You can only extend it. So if this ever happened, you would just extend everybody's term a
Sure.
year. So that would also follow the same with area councils. It would go into, like I said, it would be more hectic for that 1 year, but it would give us the off year to build capacity and maybe do voter registration events. You know, I voted
Sure.
sticker contests, those type of things. But yes, it would mean everything all at once. Yes, so I'm not
Okay.
saying that logistically that would be a little bit more, it's already stressful,
Sure.
if we would add a little more, but
Right, and
yes,
challenging too. That's.
it's, right, it's
maybe that's
challenging
what made
now,
that stressful.
yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Malky.
Yeah, I guess I have, oh, hello?
No,
Oh,
I was just acknowledging that I see you,
Oh,
Councilor
okay.
Farrell, you're up next.
okay,
Councilor Malky.
I guess I have a lot of the same feelings as my colleague here, Councilor Baker. It seems like we don't usually try to nickel and dime elections. We put the best approach. Turnout is certainly something to aspire to, but to me, I think the reason or the people will turn out when they feel like they have a choice of candidates and they're looking to make a difference, and when they have enough information to decide. And as a relatively recent new candidate, not as recent as, well, Steve would say, it seems like this would make it harder for new candidates to kind of break in, maybe keep competing for, attention, news coverage, money for contributions, volunteers. I mean, I think a lot of the most active, politically involved people in Newton in an election year or presidential year, for example, in September, October, they're probably gonna be up knocking on doors in New Hampshire or sending postcards to Georgia or Pennsylvania or something like that. And they'd be less available to, be doing door knocking for a local candidate. And I think people's attention, it's like, I don't know about this year because everyone's so seems to be tired of Trump and tired of Biden, but typically a contested presidential election or gubernatorial election kind of sucks all the oxygen up and attention. And I think that would kind of detract from people focusing on local issues. And also, as Councilor Baker mentioned, I kind of like that, it's the only, I think I'm the only unenrolled councilor, I'm not Republican, not Democratic. And I think it's a virtue that local elections are not politically partisan in the Democratic Republican sense. I wouldn't like to see kind of local races conflated with that type of conflict, I guess.
Can I just respond?
Let me just go to, Council Farrell.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Can't hear you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Much of what Councilor Malachy and Councilor Baker said, I agree with. And not to question these numbers, but I really would like to see a little more of a breakout of those numbers. I guess I find it a little hard to believe that we need the same amount of police activity in a local election as we do for a presidential election. We may. I'd like to understand that because, to be perfectly honest, I don't see a lot of police around during the elections. But also, I think it's really important for us to understand that the municipal elections are very serious, and they really do focus on our needs and interests and concerns. And I think it is up to us to generate more enthusiasm among the city voters. I think it's very discouraging when people see that only 6 of 24 seats are contested in a council race, or when no seats are contested in a school committee race. There's not a lot of enthusiasm or reason to actually go out and vote. So I think it's incumbent upon us as elected officials and as guardians of our own destiny that we take into account, how do we get people to vote? What do we do to encourage them to do that? So I'm in favor of maintaining the current situation. I would like to see some more breakdown of those numbers. I guess I just find it really hard to believe that the preparation and intensity of a presidential election year is the same cost as a municipal election. It may well be. I just find that hard to understand. And finally, I'm not sure I'm prepared to run for serve a third year right now. Just for conversation's sake.
I know Councilor Albright wants to respond to some of the things that Councilor Malachy said. Clerk,
I just want to
wants to
mention,
respond. Go ahead.
yeah, Councilor Farrell, just to let you know, by law, we have to have a police officer at every polling location. So it is really, there are fixed costs. They don't.
So is that the
change.
only, I'm sorry, is that the only function of the police on election day, is to be at the polling places?
Yes, we have
And
one in every place.
during a presidential election, they don't do anything else?
Not for me. Maybe they have their own phone calls and their own concerns security wise, but for us by state law, we have to have one police officer at every polling location
So for the
for any election.
32 polling locations, it's costing us $75,000 for that one day?
If, I don't remember which line item, hold on one second. If it's other,
You had, just for police, I think it said $75,000, I'm not sure.
oh,
And if
that's
it's,
seasonal wages, that's our that's our election workers, that they do the mailings the month before and that day. We have about around 250 people that day as election
yeah,
workers.
I understand, they each make what, maybe a couple of $100? Maybe not even that much?
The most, yeah, they're working about 20 hours, so.
Right. So I mean,
So
no,
yeah, it's strictly
I'm just saying I would love to see a little bit of a breakout, but I'm sure you did your homework on all of this. I guess I'm just curious about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you. I guess I'll start. Councilor Baker, I have a question. Do you recall, is it true, as I recall, that up until the early 20th century, or even quite a ways into the 20th century, all of the elections were held annually in the month of May for both the state and local offices?
Your knowledge is more vast than mine.
I'm wondering if you think.
I'm not that old enough that I remember that.
No, I didn't think you knew it firsthand, that, but I could be mistaken on that, but that was my recollection of constitutional history in Massachusetts, and I wanted to bring that up because I don't think we should suggest that there is some sort of eternal tradition here. I'm not saying your point is otherwise wrong, I'm just mentioning that. I think Councillor Albright, I would be curious to see some examples of places elsewhere in the country that have done this, for future discussions on this, because I would certainly be curious to know what the level of blank voting is on the lower offices, which is not necessarily an argument against doing this, but just if the argument is that we want to have more people participate and more turnout, which I think is great, I would also want to make sure that there is a compelling argument there that the turnout is significantly higher for those lower level offices at the local level. Because if it's the case that people, they show up, they vote for president, maybe they vote for, US Senate and a couple other things, and then they just leave the rest of the ballot blank at essentially the same, and you get the same rates of effective turnout on the lower offices, then, maybe it's not worthwhile to change this. So again, not saying we shouldn't do this, just saying I'd like to have more information on that particular point. My assumption, but this is purely speculation, is that this move would tend to probably favor existing incumbents for some of the reasons that have been discussed already in terms of, getting kind of lost in the shuffle with all the other elections that are going on and things like that. But that's not necessarily a reason not to do it, because there are plenty of compelling arguments for doing this change, which have been raised. My other question, I guess for the administration, since I see Mr. Yo is here, is this something that has been contemplated on your end? Is this something that you're entertaining or considering, or is this a non-starter, which is an important question when it comes to a home rule petition?
Which, thank you for raising that, Councilor Humphrey, and Mr. Yo, if you want to answer, I'll come to you in a second, but the next thing I was going to discuss was, how do we do this? If we wanted to do this, what does that mean? And I believe our charter establishes when our elections are. Article 8, Section 2, maybe if memory serves, says that our elections are in the odd year. To effectuate a charter change, 2 ways to do it. Charter Commission, we're not going to go there. The other way is a home rule petition to the state legislature, and a home rule petition to the state legislature to modify the city charter requires the approval of the mayor. You can't override a mayoral veto for a home rule petition. So the Constitution in the state law says that you have to have 2/3 of the city council and approval of the mayor. So I think Councilor Humphrey's question is a good one, which is, does the mayor support this? Because you literally cannot do it without approval of the mayor.
I did raise it with the mayor and Mr. Yo. I don't know if it's, I think is it 3 meetings tonight?
Okay.
2 meetings probably. And the mayor did not object to it. She hadn't thought about it a lot, but she didn't object to it. She wondered how we would handle the, I explained to her that we'd probably ask for an extra year for everybody, and it would shorten, it would go for an extra year. So she didn't have any major objections on first blush.
Okay, and I should say, my intention, I mean, the committee's the committee, my intention was not to necessarily vote on this tonight, because I think what we would need to do is hold this, and if there were a desire to move forward, we would want to sort of draft up what a home rule would look like, what we would be thinking about for implementation, and transition provisions. I think that has to be part of the proposal.
I'm bringing it to the committee because I know the law department will need to help us. And I know the law department likes to know that there's some reason for the work that they're doing, that I've discussed it with the committee, and the committee says, okay, we're sort of interested. I know, really.
Yeah.
And Councilor Humphrey has asked some good questions, and I thought that's what I would be offering to do, is do the research on these other communities who already switched to this other method. What is the turnout? What's the outcome? And provide some data, but I didn't want to move forward without a discussion with this committee first. And you know, I understand the tradition. And it's always hard to move off a tradition. But from everything that I've read and all the research that's been done about it, that it really does foster democracy, the little d democracy. And the turnout represents more of the community, which I think we should all be happy to have that happen. Although I'm glad that it brings us a cost saving, that really wasn't my initial reason, and it's not the Globe's initial reason for suggesting it, and all this other research that's been done. It's not their initial reason, really, to foster some excitement about local elections. I mean, I can't, I'm sure all of you have done door knocking and people say, what's a city council? You know? So, yeah, what?
Sure.
How many of you are there? And 24, what?
Yeah.
Why? So there's a lot of work that could be done here, but I'm hoping that you will at least allow us to move forward with some more research and some more information and come back with a possible home.
Councilor Farrell, your hand was up earlier. Did you intentionally take it down?
I did. It was just a thing. I would like to know whose law it is that incumbents' names are always bolded on the ballots.
What?
So I think they're bolded on the ballot, but
They
they're,
just say candidate for re-election. They don't say they're not bolded.
Oh, okay, not bolded anymore. I thought they were.
And ballot styles are dictated by the state styles, like the whole style that you see.
Yeah, even the note that they're up for re-election seems to me a bit of advertising, so.
Councilor Humphrey, Councilor Humphrey?
Thank you. I had a few more questions or observations. Question for the clerk. So I couldn't quite hear earlier when I think you were addressing this point. Would these be separate ballots or would they be the same ballot, but we're printing it?
Separate ballot, so say if it was a primary where we were giving out typical parties like Republican, Democrat, they would still get the same local ballot. So it would be a separate ballot, Councilor Humphrey, but it would be in the same envelope, like mailed with the other ballots.
The interesting thing about that is we do have a recent example as a test case on that, which is the 2020 presidential primary that also had a citywide referendum. Those were two separate ballots, obviously. And I just checked the numbers there and it was almost everyone, it looks like, voted in both of those, right? They did not just pull one ballot and then leave the other one. They did actually turn in ballots for both of them. It appears to me from at least a quick glance of those numbers. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 32,000 for both. If you add up Republican and Democratic presidential primary ballots, and then you look at the number of votes cast for the city referendum. So I thought that was an interesting data point in terms of getting people to participate in a sort of on a city matter in a larger election. Again, you could argue back and forth on the pros and cons of that in terms of voter information, that kind of thing. But that was an example where we were able to save a lot of money and get a lot of participation from residents on a citywide referendum, which I tend to think is a good thing. You know, and I guess the only other thing I was going to say is I'm sympathetic to some of the arguments in theory that have been raised as reasons not to do this in terms of, you know, how do you get your, you know, volunteers interested? How do you get to the doors and see, you know, when everything else is happening and maybe people are going out of state and so forth. But my guess is actually this might change things in a positive direction in terms of how campaigns are run in some senses, because, for example, you probably have to do less advertising as a campaign to your voters to get them to show up, because you know they're going to show up already, and you have a pretty good idea of who's going to show up for a state election and certainly for a federal presidential election. And so at that point, you know, maybe there are some cost reductions from the candidate side to doing this as well. And it's a little bit less of a heavy lift to remind people to show up. And I think a lot of us, I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of us probably spend quite a bit of the money on just reminding our own supporters to show up. So there's some potential, you know, benefits there as well, I could see from a candidate standpoint. It's always a lot easier to, from an educational standpoint, to say, okay, I'm going to go to pretty much every house here, just about, or at least 80% of the houses, and I'm going to talk to people and explain to them, what is the city council? What are the issues that we work on? What would you like to see done? As opposed to, kind of playing a guessing game or wasting a lot of energy and effort on people that are just simply never going to show up for that. And I don't think it's true that people who don't vote in local elections have no opinions on the local issues. They might have a little bit less thoughts on it, or maybe they prefer incumbents generally because they think things are going well, and that's why they don't vote in local elections. Who knows? It's hard to speculate on that. But if you go door to door and talk to people that only vote, say, in presidential elections, guess what? The number one issue is still going to be the quality of the roads, right? That's a local issue. And so those conversations are going to still be the exact same. You might as well be getting them to vote if you can. Some countries have compulsory voting for all their elections where everyone has to vote. So, it would be if we're getting typically 80+% turnout for a presidential election and, less for the non-presidential state elections, it would be nice in theory if we can to get some of these other folks to vote in local elections. So, I'm still undecided on this just because I feel like I need more information, but I think there's a lot of, positive angles to consider for this. Thank you.
Comment from the council?
I asked Council Baker, if you want to let her, you're okay, Chief?
Sure.
So the thing that Councilor Humphrey reminds me of is that every year that I've had to go out and do door knocking, you're encouraged by the people who know what they're doing to use the democratic vote builder tool and find out who are the good voters and go to their doors. And it's always killed me that there's so many more people, because we know the turnout is low, there's so many more people to address, and none of us go see those people because we're told to pay attention to only the good voters. So I think it can't do anything but help for those of us who are going door knocking to go out to more voters and tell them about what's going on in the city. It really could make a huge difference.
Council Baker.
So, if you're doing data analysis, I'm curious if the other jurisdictions have adopted this as nonpartisan local elections.
Yeah,
whether they're
we can find
partisan.
that out.
Because I do think there's a real distinction here. And again, not to point to any particular races, but one advantage of having local elections in off years is that when a vacancy occurs in a statewide office or a state office, the local elected officials can run for it without giving up their seat, which is
That's crazy.
I don't want to lose that advantage of the candidate pool, so to speak.
I was actually thinking about that, and I don't know if you could still not appear on the ballot for two different offices. I don't know if that forecloses the
That's an
possibility.
interesting question.
We might want to look into that.
Then the question whether you have to make an election at your election, but that's another story. Certainly I think it's worth investigating. I don't, my views, I don't think are likely to change even with persuasive data. But I think the point is that it's worth investigating this. I just think that the challenges of doing it, again, with the Secretary of State's opposition, that also means a home rule petition. Home rule petitions don't automatically pass, and something that has this kind of, like we found out with the electrification, there tend to be a big issue or a bigger issue that has to move on this. And by the time this passes, who knows how long I'll still be on the council. But a free ride for an extra year? That's tempting, but never mind.
Fair enough. Councilor Farrell.
Unmute. Thank you again. Listening, the enhanced turnout, in my opinion, lessens the opportunity for challengers in the local election to have an impact. They get drummed out by the constancy of public and particularly presidential, gubernatorial elections, and they just get drummed out. Their message doesn't get out to people, in my opinion. And I think that would be a really important thing to make certain that it's hard enough to get people to go out and vote for non-incumbents right now. And to make it any more difficult by saying nobody's going to listen because of the drumbeat of all of the nonsense that's going on would be not a very good thing. So again, I'm opposed to combining this with a presidential election.
Thank you. You do know you're an incumbent now, right? Just kidding, just kidding.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And I'm ever hopeful that whatever I do will encourage somebody to run against me.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. So I think we have sort of two decisions. One is, is it worth investigating? And then hopefully a motion to hold. I don't see any other. I mean, I guess the other, if people don't feel it's worth investigating, you could obviously go NAM. But my preference would be to get at least more information. I know it doesn't sound like we're going to persuade Councilor Baker, which, by the way, he always leads with like, I'm open to persuasion, blah, 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 and when he has a pretty set opinion. He acknowledges this time he's not. That's outstanding. It is. It's good. No, I mean it, like you're honest. That's great. But I'd like to at least see, I think there were some good questions tonight. I'd like to see what the other communities are doing. Hopefully, the committee's open at least to seeing some additional information and getting at least a fully vetted proposal, which again, may very well get rejected. But I think we owe it to the people and to the sponsor to get a fully vetted
Agreed.
proposal. Are folks
One
generally
other-
supportive of that? Go ahead.
One other comment, agree with everything I just heard you say. I was just poking around really quickly. If at one point, the state of Massachusetts, right, changed local elections away from even year to odd year, I'd love to know why. Like, to me, that's really interesting. If that is indeed the case, I don't know if it is, but
Yeah, I
let's
don't,
add that to our, let's make sure that's on the list of.
So
Things we
history of
carry.
elections.
yeah, and when there. I think Councilor Humphrey's right. I believe the state constitution once changed from May elections. So, Councilor Farrell, your hand is still up. Is that new or old?
You're on mute, sir.
Okay. Councilor Maliki?
I'd be particularly interested in any experience in any communities that have actually done it and doing it for a while. As opposed to the ones that are just voted for it. And also maybe part of the history. I mean, it seems like the tradition in Massachusetts in the odd number of years is that cities do it in the fall and towns have their elections in the spring.
Towns, I think New York State, they still allow towns on their own just because they probably have their own calendar. I think,
Oh,
or
yeah,
in- towns are still separate because they have,
Cities, okay.
well, and if they're an open town, I mean, they have different, the town meetings are different and they're structured.
Right.
So I'm not sure.
But it seems to sort of stagger things out that, you want to get your time structured. Everyone outside. Yeah, the spring, towns in the spring, cities in the fall.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and set me straight, is at least a majority of the council wants to get the fully vetted, of the committee, wants to get a fully vetted proposal, wants to get the answers to these questions, thinks it's worthwhile to investigate this. Yes, okay, so we can at least give you that response, and you can, go back to legal, you can go to do more research, whoever. And then on the item, can I get a motion to hold?
Move hold.
Councilor Oliver has moved hold. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
The
that's
only
6-0 hold.
Fight I would have about drafting a home rule petition so we have the data, but that's see where you go.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. You'll have to stay in here, but we will.
Let's do it.
I miss it so much.
We love leaf blowers.
I am going to miss that one, I'm sorry.
This committee loves leaf blowers and trees.
Did I sign something to that effect when I joined?
Yes. That's part of the logo now, love leaf blowers. I shouldn't say we love leaf blowers. We love leaf blower ordinances and we love trees.
Got
Item 90-24, requesting an update on leaf blower landscaper registration and enforcement ordinance. Commissioner Piccarello, you will be joining us for this one. You want to fill in the hot seat? Perfect.
I'm also joined by my assistant Deb Finnemore.
Oh, wonderful. Can she come to the table?
Yeah.
We would love for her to. welcome, Ms. Finnemore.
Thank
What,
What's the head year?
start with the update, or do you want to say anything before we?
No, for those who are new to this committee, and you didn't realize that, I wore my lead tie tonight, this for. Every time we talk about this, I wear my lead tie. Anyhow.
You don't think we're gonna fall for that, do you?
Anyway, but this is. This is a matter that has been before this committee multiple times, because this was the committee that originated an ordinance change in the noise ordinance to try and deal with the specific problem of leaf blowers. And the ordinance was passed, I know, 4 or 5 years ago now. That's basically requires leaf blowers to be at a 65 decibel unit with the manufactured rating. And that in the summer you use only electric and not gas power. And the innovation that the commissioner is going to report on, and we have to give the administration credit for it, Mr. Yo is divided into multiple parts, but is the introduction of a part-time member of the staff who had been involved in the enforcement process, but also we went through a process in this committee a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago now, to create a registration process where everybody who undertakes this kind of service in the city has to register, get a sticker, acknowledge the knowledge of the law, agree to inform their employees, and so that there is not a case that we hope of someone saying, gee, I never knew this law existed. The other piece of the enforcement mechanism that I think is important, homeowners, I think, may still get a letter, but the enforcement is against the company, not against the employee, because there was concern that the staff were just being issued this equipment and they were getting a ticket, and then the whole question was who was the operator and all of that. So the introduction of this specific enforcement agent made a significant difference. The police also have a role to play, and there's a whole separate question of how much and what's their capacity and so forth, and we can get into that. But I just want to point out that this is the result, for those of you who are new to this matter, a fairly long process of working with this ordinance to try and make it more enforceable and more effective.
Did you mention the homeowner?
The homeowner is I think not formally liable, but can become so. So if somebody.
It was sort of the opposite. The homeowner is responsible, but if the homeowner has selected a landscaper who is on the city's approved list,
That's right.
indicating that they've
Yeah.
Acknowledged the ordinance and the requirements of the ordinance, then that sort of alleviates any burden from that homeowner. That homeowner can't be held responsible.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification. And it's the whole idea here was to try and move both the incentive for the homeowner and the landscaper to get registered, the homeowner to hire that registered landscaper.
Okay. So yes, we've been working on this for years. We've modified it, right? Maybe 3 years ago, with that update with the registration requirements, as well as the update to the homeowner liability provision, I think. And so today is about getting an update. Like, how's it going? What did we do? Did we do a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's working. We have a little cheat sheet here that I can go by as far as registrations in every year that we've had. Sorry.
I apologize. I know there are some people tuned in. I just want to say that the city does have a very good leaf blower information page on the city's website. Even if you just search leaf blower, you can go to it and you can find a lot of this information that we're about to hear in case you want to follow along. So I apologize, but that's a good information for anyone out there.
Can we pass you out stuff? I know we didn't give it to you ahead of time.
Okay, so we have additional information. Information is supposed to be at the committee 48 hours in advance. So maybe Councilor Baker, you want to make a motion to?
I move suspension of the rules so we can admit the late filed information.
My fault, totally apologize. Thank you.
Committee members all in favor?
Yes,
Aye,
can't wait to see it.
okay.
All right.
By the way, I
And
love your printing.
the other thing we do here to make sure that the information gets out is Jacqueline prints the information with the report. Make sure that this information is all publicly available. Right back. Same page, I think.
That's right.
I apologize, my driving.
That's okay. So for registrations, as you can see, starting in 2021, up to 2023 of last year, registrations have all gone up. And so far this year for registrations, we have 97, which is very early in the year. Just to mention that in the beginning. So we do have a new leaf blower brochure that we put together. Is it right there?
This is my old one, so
Yeah.
that's.
You can throw that
Yeah,
one away, it's no
okay.
longer, we have made,
The updated one is on the website.
It is.
yes, I did make sure that was done before we came.
And at the same
I
time,
will
we'll
get them
pass out
all.
the door knockers that we'll place on the residents' door knocker if there's a violation. Will be checked off by Chuck Edgerhide, who's the recall reporter. Just letting the homeowner know that, you know, they've been warned or ticketed, or, and even for the homeowner to realize that maybe they're an unregistered police call.
So this is for this door hanger.
Yeah.
Is for the property owner who's not responsible as a property owner.
Right.
Is there a separate one for a property owner who could also be responsible?
That would be an actual ticket that will be
The
issued.
ticket will be left with, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Please go ahead.
So when this gets left in a property owner's place, it doesn't mean that the contractor is only violating at their property. It's the fact that the contractor is violating at multiple properties. So every homeowner has to get this first, even if it's not the first time that the contractor is violating. Okay, so a contractor doesn't have to register. He's gonna get a warning if he's never been in the city before. Then if he's been in the city, got a warning, the next time he gets caught, it's a $300 fine. Property owner's gonna get one, be saying unregistered. If that same contractor comes back for a third time, now both of them are gonna get the $300 ticket. The property owner for continuing to hire non-registered and the company for continuing to be non-registered. So that's why this is only for a warning, but you have to realize that every homeowner doesn't know what another homeowner is doing, so the contract is kind of making out in that deal that they're getting a warning over here, but over here they're getting fined, but that property owner only getting a warning. Because it's not fair to fine a different homeowner. It's too
Yeah, I
difficult to try to keep up with
I
that.
mean, I don't know how you would track the properties a registered landscaper is going to.
Correct.
It's different.
Unless there's a violation
Right,
Absolutely.
at that property, right,
And
okay.
basically, a homeowner doesn't get fined until the second time the same landscaper has,
For the unregistered.
unregistered landscaper has done their house.
right. And it's
Councilor
only for being unregistered, it's not for over the 65
Yeah.
decibels.
Any of the other.
Over 65 only goes to the contractor, the homeowner just gets a warning that your contractor is over the 65 decibels.
That's the way the ordinance is.
Yes.
Councilor Farrell, do you have a question about something they just said? Sorry, process.
Somebody's saying muted.
I would like to ask a question that has been posed to me by a landscaper in Ward 8, particularly in Ward 8, about city contractors who do using their leaf blowers and other equipment.
Right,
Yeah,
Pardon me?
Go.
as city contractors are required as well to follow the rules. This year, Parks and Rec has met with all of our contractors and actually gone to their yards, inspected all of their equipment, and made it incredibly clear that this is, this compliant equipment is what they need to use. Obviously, they're registered. They're registered, they're gonna be using compliant equipment and following the times of the year rules. We did have had occasionally a situation where one of our contractors will bring in a crew that's not based here, one of the Newton crews. And that is where once or twice a improperly loud device was being used on city property. We've made it very clear to our contractors, that kind of situation can't happen again in the future. So, so we're redoubling our efforts, to make sure, and Chuck will enforce on, no matter where.
Doesn't matter.
Who has the improper leaf blowers. So, so we really are taking every effort to make sure that doesn't happen again. So, but great question. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's apparently, as you know, Mr. Yao, because you've received these letters also, that there have been recurring incidences, or incidents, excuse me, particularly out in Ward 8 of a contractor who has to the city, and when he's been when calls have been made to the police or the department, apparently you have to see him in action in order to do anything about it.
Yes, we do. Yep, no, and we're well aware of
Well,
this. This is exactly what I'm referring to.
And so we shouldn't worry about this, particularly this person or these people out in this area anymore.
I certainly hope not. No. So, but everyone should keep their ears and eyes open. So.
Well, if you keep your ears and eyes open, who actually can document that somebody's been doing that? Who has to see it in person?
Well, okay. So in terms of enforcement, we have to have one of our enforcement team there to document it. So Chuck or Andy or one of the other rest of the crew from ISD, they're the only ones who can issue violations. However, if we hear that one of our city contractors is using improper equipment, we'll take action ourselves right away. So it doesn't have to go through ISD. It can come to myself or to Commissioner Banks, or one of her team members. Derek Mannion is the superintendent in charge of grounds maintenance, and he supervises these contractors. He is the one who's been out to actually inspect these contractors' yards about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, not to press it excessively, but apparently in some instances, by the time someone shows up, the contractor has moved on or moved their machines and turned them off or whatever, and so therefore it's not possible to document it.
That's right, they move fast. Yep.
So it's a little frustrating when someone is doing that, and
Agreed.
it can only be documented by the official documenters.
Well, in the case of a city contractor, don't worry about that part of it. So if we have information, credible information that a city contractor is doing something improper, just let us know.
So I should worry about it.
Everyone should worry. We need everyone's eyes and ears to help enforce.
Try to do the best we can.
Yeah, we're all going to do the best we can, given the resources we have.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Continue. We interrupt.
It's okay. So we do have some links on this literature here where complaints can be made. We can view the registration of all the landscape companies that are registered. Also, you can see what violations they have also on this at these links that we have on the sheet. We also have what is the pie charts and yeah.
Are we able to go on to the city webpage?
Can you show us
Can we
those?
do that? Yes, I want to show
We
you.
weren't sure if we could.
You want to go over and drive, Deb, or
I don't care whatever.
Jacqueline, you want to hand over the controls?
Yes, I can do.
Thank you. Thank you.
So while you're doing that, let me just clarify something I think is implicit and maybe explicit, in the documents. If you hire, and a homeowner hires an unregistered landscaper, there is at least the prospect, not immediately, of a fine for that homeowner. The question I was curious about, and I can't remember if our ordinance covers this, does it also apply to a suspended registrar? Because part of the incentive, it seems to me, that the suspension process would have, because it means that somebody's going out and operating, people operating who have been suspended, is that the homeowner would then be liable for using a suspended operator. That's not registered, but I don't know if we will cover that in our
I
ordinance.
believe we had a question into the law department about that. Because if you are suspended, you are registered. So you wouldn't be operating unregistered.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions that we have for the law department, we weren't sure how.
Maybe
It was
one of
gonna
the
be
things we
addressed.
want to think about
Yeah.
is whether that, it's part of the challenge is somebody says, well, well, I'm just going to get another fine for being unregistered. It's just, it's the cost of doing business.
Right.
And I've literally run into people who said, I'll just pass this on to my property owner. However, when the property owner gets the fine directly,
Yeah.
it has a little more impact.
It does.
Our assumption is that if you are, that those folks will be not be unregistered, so. But we're gonna check with the law department, but
Okay.
if they're suspended, you're not registered.
Yeah, I hope so, because that would be, it's sort of consistent. You go through the formality of signing the form and then say, I don't care. But now I'm protected and my property owners who hire me are protected. And I can go on and violate the law with
and-
I'm sorry, so you're saying that for purposes of holding the homeowner responsible, a suspended contractor you think should be considered unregistered?
Right, but we'll have to warn them. We'll have to issue a warning, if we haven't warned them before, right? Everyone deserves this.
Everyone gets one warning.
Everyone gets
For the
one.
homeowner.
Yeah, to the homeowner, yeah.
And that's fair.
That's right. Yeah.
But we don't want to create a kind of curious safe harbor of,
We do not, and
No,
right now, I
but we
don't
don't
know,
want to require homeowners to a reasonable amount of due diligence. I mean, I don't think we expect them to weekly go on and see who's been suspended or, I mean.
but they give them a warning.
right, and
But a warning.
also, I don't know if the commissioner mentioned this, but we are now pursuing through the court, suspension of a number of firms' ability to get registered here. So because those firms that have not paid,
That's the ones who owe like over $1,000.
well, we're going after lots
A
of.
lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
just earlier this week, we went to the district court. On 5, 6 or 7. For cases. For, fines.
Councilman Malfi, you got a question?
Yeah, I did, so actually, let me follow up on that one, so what's the leverage to collect fines, just going to the courts?
that's our only means, yeah.
So they're suspended, they're not supposed to be operating, and they're just not paying the fines.
Right, but think about this, because right now it's the change in the year, so all of the old registrations from 23 are gone. Where we're starting to register new firms for 24. If you haven't paid your bills and we're going after you in court, we're not gonna register them, yeah.
And, what are the ways that a homeowner could know that the landscaper they're using is not registered?
That will show you.
Show you right
Oh,
now.
okay, so one way is checking the website. Now, if somebody's suspended, do they also have to like turn in their tag or something, whatever?
No,
physically something?
no. No, it's not like that.
Well, remember also, they don't have this year's tag. They won't be given this year's tag, it's a different color every year.
Yeah. And it's stuck to the vehicle, it's stuck to
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. It's about the same.
Every vehicle is supposed to be identified.
Yeah.
We have interrupted several times.
That's okay.
Please.
So all I've done so far is go to Newton MA, go to government, go to inspectional services. And on the left-hand side of ours, we have the whole section for leaf blowers. So once you come on here, the contractor would go here and go directly to NewGov and do his registration. Here we have the list of all the prior year registrations, including current year as of right now. Excuse me. 2021 and 2022, we were not using NewGov for this, so those are just PDF files. 23 and 24, we started using NewGov and we're able to have interactive forms that you, spreadsheets that you could use. So
Sort.
yes, you can do a ton of things with these.
Searching.
So it's set to go by count. You can do it by count, you can do it by amount. You have to have a number on these fields. We can pick by company, what cities they're from, or just company names. And also to let everybody know, here's where they'll be able to see if their contract has been suspended. Even though they were registered at one point, there is a column at the end for a 60-day suspension or a 1-year suspension. Just to point those out, that you'd be able to search that real quickly,
If they've ever been suspended or if they're suspended.
just in this year, just in this current year. So from there, we pick company name, and you can see, obviously, there's gonna be a lot of them. This report is just to find out if their name's there. It's not really for anything else. If you come to the bottom, you can see all the company names. You can change your columns, you can sort them, makes it a little bit easier to figure out who you're looking for. And then at
You
the,
should by bill too.
yes, then at the very bottom, if you scroll all the way across, you see the funds that we've collected so far for registrations this year. So the $5,100 includes the $50 registration fee and the $2 per sticker that they ask for. And just to let you know, there is not a misprint on here. Somebody actually paid over $190 to register, because they're claiming they have 70 vehicles.
Yeah.
70.
There,
Yeah, it kind of surprised me. It's at the very bottom.
So the $2 per
There it is right there.
is the bumper sticker.
yeah,
Yes. So everybody has to pay 50, and then it's gonna be at least $2 additional for one sticker, but they can get as many as they want to pay
so
for.
many vehicles there.
And then this last two columns, the falses are the 60-day suspension and the 1-year suspension. So we were trying to make it in an easy place to find it instead of having to go to the violation page. This was the easier place based on my application, how we set it up. So I'm hoping this is good for everybody to interact and use.
Counselor Oliver.
Yes, thank you, sir. So how does someone come in here and just the fastest way possible to say, you know, I use ATL contractors, are they registered and in good standing? Can I continue to have them come to my house?
Yep, so you'd come here first, I would go right to the bottom here, and I would find the column. Bring it back over to the left with it. So I would come right here to company name, and I would come down to a filter. And then I would look and see ATL is right there, say done, apply. Now you see their name, and you're gonna wanna go back down again.
Anyone want to check their contractors here?
Will it also show violations?
That's a separate one.
That's a
This one
different
is
one.
just for registration. The actual violations, there's another interactive spreadsheet.
And this will
that you'll
show
be able to
if
do.
they're suspended or.
So ATL has paid $54, so they have 2 trucks that they claim they're gonna use in Newton.
So the two columns there that say false,
Yep,
that's today.
that's as of today, yes. Which is good, they should say false, you don't want them to
Yeah,
say.
no, I get that, but I mean, this is great.
Yep. But what would you like?
There should be like a green, like, yeah, use them. No, don't.
Green,
I mean, we're expecting a lot, like, come on, guys.
I know, you have to
We're
understand too,
expecting a lot, right?
we're working with a system, so
Oh,
I'm getting
totally.
out what I can get out for you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make sure that it's easier and easy to look at and
User-friendly,
use.
Oh, yeah.
If I had the ability to make more changes to it, I definitely would.
Understood. Okay,
I can't think of any other columns that are on my application that would make it any easier, but as long as you
Right.
see their name there, that's the first good step. That means they've registered and they've paid. They won't even make this list if they haven't paid yet. They can register, we review it, and
right.
if they haven't paid us the fees, they
They're
won't
not
be
on-
on
They
this
won't be
list.
on it.
They're considered
And
registered,
if they're suspended, they're still on here, but it'll show
Correct.
true, right?
right?
Right.
It will show
Whether
true
it's
at the end.
60 or 1 year.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's all just registration.
And for 1 second, Tom,
Yes,
how often is that updated?
this is updated weekly on Fridays. You'll see right here where the update is. I had it updated today just so that it would be current for the presentation tonight, because I wanted to make sure we were giving you good data.
Real
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
So when it, that is where it says view company, city and name,
Yep,
is that,
those are all drop down, so you can select any of those items to pick
Okay.
from. So
even that top? Go up a little bit more, right there, that one?
this one here only has by company, city and name. The violation one has has two options. So when we go to the violation one, I'll show you that one. And
You can actually look up, get their phone number right off of here, so
do what else?
find somebody who's registered and small.
Okay. Oh. Ooh. I didn't do that.
No, it's fine.
Nice, so being in on Zoom calls and on screen things. Perfect. Yep. So that one right there, click that. Thank you. This one now will show you everybody that had a violation. And this is last updated as of December, because that was the last time Chuck was in, so there was no reason to do anything to this one. So on this one, you can do by total fees paid by company or total fees by address. So by address is the city address, the property address here. And then this is by landscaper. So either one is just as good.
Fees or fines? It says fees.
Fees, that would be all the fines.
Yeah.
But just the term there is fees, right?
Yep.
Should you change it to fines?
Well, the registration fee's part of that also, right? No, okay.
This is just violations.
Maybe you change that just so, because I think that's a little unclear.
Okay.
Can you show us an example of,
1 second. Don't want to forget my notes so I can make these changes for you. All right, so we do want to look at them by company or by address?
by company? Just where the outliers, you've got some that are outliers.
Oh, we've got plenty. So these are the violation types that they can have: unregistered, over 65 decibels, or summer ban. The other one is hours, and we haven't had anything in that, and that's why it came up as an empty value. So,
Hours meaning like 8 p.m.
yes,
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah,
yes,
or early in the morning.
A company the city uses. Oh, hours.
Anyway.
Yeah, hours.
Hours of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hours,
hours,
okay.
Time.
time of
No
day.
more homonyms. All right,
Nope.
go ahead.
So this way of looking at it will show you each one of these, how many violations there's been. There is a total of $92,900 for the year 2023. Of that, 33.6% was for people over 65 decibels, $31,200. Then we have everybody that was unregistered, $38,300 in tickets, which accumulated 41.2% of the people that were fined last year. So it's pretty nice to be able to see all of this and to have it broken down by each category type that they could violate for.
And you can look at particular contractors here to see what violations they.
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Like,
So
like,
even on this one, you can come down to the bottom and hit the details, and it will give you everything down here. And you can sort again by company name, or you can go to company name and actually type in the one that you want.
Now, can you just sort by violations?
Yes, you can.
So if you wanted to see who's the,
Who violates with the over 65 decibels? Sure.
So you can go here to violation number 1 and you can pick over 65 decibels. And then you will see this.
Can you like rank them by amount of fines accumulated?
I think they're alphabetical. I think.
I did alphabetical already.
Can you click on the column header?
Yep. You can click on any of these and see what you want. They all have the same items in them.
Right, but I mean, you could have sorted it there by fine.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, sorted
yeah,
by-
So that
sorry,
would have done what they're asking.
gotcha.
You can sort by, you can look for accumulation of fines for over 65 decibels. Or no?
So it looks like most of them are three.
I think you can sort by individual
Yes,
Yes.
but
violation,
on each one,
but you can't look to see which landscapers have accumulated the most over 65 violations per county.
yes. So that would be this way, and then I would do over 65. Now I see all the over 65s, and then I can do the pie chart again. So
Be the tallest one here, but.
it would be that one right there,
That would tell you.
hierarchy.
Oh,
Yeah, no surprise.
So some of these people are just repeat offenders.
Correct,
They just rather get tickets than do anything
Yep.
else.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're suspended at this
And they
point.
are on
And then
suspension,
go.
Okay.
And they're going,
And in
yeah,
court.
we're going to court.
so that one got hit with everything.
Huh.
So we're trying, everything is new to us, so we,
No,
no,
no.
but you can also, at the bottom, go to company, type in them, or actually not type it in, you can just search, find it.
I've heard of them.
I have the wrong glasses, I have my glasses on and I don't need them,
You want
just
mine?
but I need them for you. You're like, they're on and on, sorry. So for Ayarachi now, you can see what locations he's gotten fines at. And then you'll see his total, which is the 4,200, go to the far right. There's his full total. So he has gotten hit with unregistered and over the limit. Over unregistered and
Decibels.
over 65, so.
Sometimes you're hit at the
That's it.
same time for multiple
Yeah.
things.
They can get
Correct.
multiple fines at
Yeah.
the same time.
So nobody can, they're unregistered, so. Would a homeowner find them, homeowner would find them on this database? Is that right?
They would find them on the violation database, not on the registered
Not
database.
registered, okay.
So if they find them on the violation one, they should really be concerned with what's the violation.
Right.
They can see right here.
Okay.
And then you could see some of them were summer bands, some of them were over 65 and unregistered. So as soon as they get the unregistered, if they continue, then the homeowner is gonna get a $300 for the unregistered.
Is there a way to keep, have at least a feel for whether they've got outstanding violations for the year, not the past ones, in the registration page? Because if I were searching, I'd want to know what my risk factors were as a homeowner.
You know, prior years?
No, for,
On 24.
24, it just says, because the past year you were let them, they get a clean shot at this. again,
Correct.
Right, except for,
Yeah, is there a column for a year up top?
No,
You sort by date?
no, this is all just 1 year. It's based on how we get the information out of it.
So in 24, people will start to get fined and whatnot. Likely.
So there'll be another,
So you'll see there'll be a new sheet that will start to form for
Correct.
24,
yes,
but can you go back and find 23 or not?
yes,
Okay,
so you have,
okay, so you can look, okay, so here we go, so you can look by
You
year.
can look in in history.
Right, so Counselor, Baker, you
There
can
you go.
look by year.
Yeah. so as far back as you can go is 23.
You can see
That's all.
if it's a more modern violation or something that happened a couple years
well,
ago.
what I'm wondering is whether the registration page, which is the one a homeowner would go to first, are you registered or unregistered, would show something about violation history. And the question is whether that's the appropriate thing to show there as opposed to here. I mean, this is a crossroads.
In the registration, can you look history too, if they were registered, in prior years also?
It's
By year,
it's
right?
two different records.
Right.
So it's a registration record and a
And
violation record.
yeah.
I would have to see if I can combine those two exports. Reporting.
To be double
I
safe,
have to look,
you would first make sure they're registered, right? And then you could go to the violations page and check to see if they had recent violations.
Well, I think part of what the value of this process is if you wanted to say homeowners, you're checking your landscaper. Because part of that's the informal enforcement, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. Then say, check your tree if you're registered to be protected, you want to register. And if you want to see their violation history, you can look that up, just like you would. If you're going to check out lawyers, you could check out whether they had a fine or any other.
They just need to go to a different one.
No, but I mean, the but we know that now, but if I'm just going to the city webpage as a homeowner, I wouldn't know what to do. So there may be some value in having some little information bar there, saying how to use this page. You know, trying to find a landscaper who's compliant.
Good point.
Here's what to do. Are they registered? Yes. Is there a violation history? You know, and then if you have a question, you want to, because again, as a homeowner, you don't want your landscaper to start violating, then get unregistered, then you get a warning, then you get exposed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's the benefit of kind of the homeowner consumer protection, having them able to get access to this information in an efficient way and understand it.
I can't check if, Councilor Farrell or Councilor Humphrey, do you guys have any questions?
If you want to click stop sharing.
I was just listening and watching the slides, and I didn't have questions on.
I couldn't see you guys, so I couldn't see if your hands are up, I apologize. Councilor Malky.
Well, okay, but, so if, I guess right now, if a contractor is not paid their fines, they're not able to register for this year. So if a person is looking for, they're checking to see if their contractor that they expect to use this year is registered or not. They might not be registered because they have a fine, but they also might not be registered because it's too early in the year. So would the person not be able to tell yet for sure if they're?
I mean, if the contractor has not registered yet, then for this year, then yeah, they wouldn't be able to know.
Okay.
But, I mean, registration started on March 1st.
Yes.
Is there a deadline particularly or?
No. Yeah, they can register up until the first of the year, right?
Yeah, up until December
Yeah.
31st.
Okay, and then during the year, so if a contractor gets a fine, you have like 30 days to pay it or something, how does that work?
They can appeal the ticket after 21 days,
Uh-huh.
okay, up to 21 days.
21 days.
And we've had plenty of appeals
Uh-huh.
on some of the violations. But after that time, they have to pay.
Okay. And then, so if they're in, kind of default, as it were, haven't paid their tickets on time, are they automatically suspended or is there a waiting period before they're actually suspended?
They're suspended after 2 violations.
Oh, so they can kind of carry one unpaid violation
Yes.
or indefinitely before they get suspended?
Correct.
Okay. And if a person wanted to check and see if their contractor was compliant, would they be able to find that out or?
Yes,
Okay. So they'd be able to see that
in one of these links, you can
the
see if they're
contractor
compliant.
owes for one, hasn't been suspended yet, but owes for one unpaid ticket.
Mhm.
Okay, and the other thing I was curious about, so all of the, I remember seeing a pass list where, is this basically a merger of violations that Chuck and also police ones? Because how is it working in the off hours? And Chuck is kind of working, is he trying to work unpredictable hours?
He does work unpredictable, so he's part-time, so he works 3 days a week. But he comes in sometimes on Saturday, he'll come
Yeah.
on a Friday, and he's not the same days every week, week after week after week. He mixes it up.
Yeah, and if somebody sees a violation, it's kind of wishful thinking, but they think they want to report a violation and hope that the guy will get a ticket.
Mhm.
Or woman. They call, it's like one central number they call,
It's on the brochure.
the brochure,
Yep.
and it might be answered by Chuck or it might be answered
Or
by
his machine.
Always be answered by Chuck's machine.
machine,
Yeah.
If
okay?
he's not in the office.
And then if he's not in the office,
There's also the zoning code enforcement agent who is also has the power to go and has.
it's Andy.
Yeah, Andy, well, was
Well,
Andy,
was
Andy's
Andy.
been promoted, but it could still be Andy, who.
Is there a new Andy yet?
We're in
the process.
If you know any good candidates, let us know.
Okay,
But Andy, for example, could issue a ticket himself and has.
and does anyone else check Chuck's voicemail besides?
I don't think so.
So if somebody just gets the voicemail, chances are it's not gonna be.
Yeah. But remember, it's Intel. So
Right.
if Chuck, if he hears of a certain address
Mhm.
or a certain landscaper,
Okay, you might check. in the next
it's,
week.
he's very sophisticated.
Yeah.
So I won't say anything more, but.
Very good.
It's
It's
in,
very good.
I do have a question about the new brochure, though. It says the police department of dispatch. And if unable to respond, the police have an authority and a duty to respond as well.
They do.
And he can't be there all the time. I'd be curious to know what the police enforcement process is doing, because this is, candidly, I've called the police and that's the number I call. I don't call ISD. When I was concerned. Have we got statistics here on the police response?
well, they have not issued really any in the last year. So, I mean, they're down staffed. This is a lower, as you've heard from the chief, this is a lower priority for them. So they have not issued any.
Well, I'm troubled by that. I mean, they should be, when the chief first joined us, he talked about the quality of life enforcement as one of his key initiatives. And we tried to take out of the risk of the police being involved, the risk of ticketing, because they're ticketing the company, they're not ticketing the operators. And I will tell you, I was very disappointed that I went to an event at Post 440, spoke at the same time the veterans were being honored, the chief was there. I came home, there was a landscaping operation going on. This is a city holiday. I called it in, nothing happened. I called back and they said the officer went by, they're in compliance. And I said, they can't be in compliance. This is a holiday. It's not a matter of whether the machine's the right machine. And I really found that really quite offensive, because that meant that the officer either was not paying attention to the ordinance or was ignoring a violation. And it seemed to me that this is not where we should be going in our city. So I would like to have the chief come back and talk to us about what is being done here, because while it's a low order enforcement, obviously if there's a health or safety issue, they've got to attend to enforce. But if they're making calls, all they have to do is just show up and look at the machine and say, okay, here's a ticket. And, you know, it's for the operator, not for the operators, but for the company. And we can't have Chuck available all the time. And I think the public needs to have a sense that there is a presence that's available, and the ordinance requires that, and the chief is supposed to keep records. So I'd like to see the committee have a report from the chief about that, not just rely, although I think these are wonderful innovations and big cheer for the whole team. But I do think that that's a gap that we need to close. That's not your.
Anybody else?
Just checking, so nobody should be using gas powered leaf blowers at all during the summer period, right?
Correct.
We got an email, all of us today, about can't you at least ban gas powered vehicles during the summer, and we've
No.
already done that.
It is, yeah.
So we get right on that.
Because we're all over that. Yeah. I do want to give credit to your department and the kind of data analysis that it represents. And I do want to say that my experience has been the enforcement patterns have been an improvement over in terms of compliance. The whole idea behind this is not to collect a lot of money from the city. The whole idea is to get people to comply with the ordinance.
It's always to become comply with city.
And not just use this as a, you know, if it turns out to be a revenue source for the city, because people are just, that's not where we want to go.
The city should make nothing on it, but, you know,
Although we
that
are,
would be the goal.
we are turning roughly $100,000, so that's interesting.
We're paying for chalk.
Yeah.
And when does he come back on duty?
He starts Monday.
Starts Monday. I think he'll have lots of business.
He will.
So we do have this item which references the chief of police, if we want to bring this up, so I would suggest that we hold this, and we can bring it back.
Well, I'd like to have the chief come in early in the season, because I do think it's important to set. I have great confidence in him.
Can I just add that because Chuck was a police officer in the past, he still has a police radio. So they do call him if you call
That's
them
true.
and he's
That's
working.
They'll dispatch him.
He gets the call and he will go directly to that location and save the police during the day when he's working.
I think.
Not making excuses, just letting you know that if Chuck is here and working, he will take that call and go do it because he knows it's gonna get looked at quick.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly happy with that, and I think that's great, and, but if he's not available,
Right.
then the question is what happens next? Because I think people are calling one dispatch number and they expect to have something happen, and that's why, I think it's important that we not have bifurcated enforcement regime. We can have different enforcement officers, we ought to have one common way of dealing.
Counselor Humphrey.
Thank you. So just a couple comments before we hold it. I'm, as one of the people that, worked on the revisions with the objectives that Councilor Baker just mentioned of trying to get to better compliance. I think this is very good progress to hear, as was the previous report that we had heard. It seems to be moving in the right direction, although, as Councilor Oliver just pointed out, presumably we don't want to be collecting that much in fines. We want to get that down, but I think that that's going to continue to move in the right direction ultimately. I know this item was a discussion about the existing ordinance and wasn't a call for more stuff, but I just, wanted to float the question of, is there anything that needs to be tweaked besides the aforementioned point about suspension versus registration? Is there anything else that it seems like we need to make some adjustments to? I know there are members of the public who are interested in taking the ordinance further, which I know is not what's before us tonight. But I'm just sort of curious to hear if there's anything in that direction, and I would be curious what the rest of the committee thinks as well.
Well, I think the ordinance is working. For what it's meant to do. Whether the landscapers want to comply with the ordinance is a whole nother thing. Hopefully, going to court and paying fines will maybe make them fly straight, so they adhere to the ordinance. But that's to be seen.
Thank you. And I also think it's encouraging, as was discussed earlier, that we now have a way that people can look up very quickly online who's registered and even get their contact info. So it's a one-stop shop, which means that we're creating a benefit for these companies for their compliance as well. So it's not just a one-way street for us. So I don't know if, maybe tonight's not the time to discuss it. I don't know, but I am curious if the other committee members, had thoughts on not just compliance with the ordinance, but whether the ordinance has everything we want in it, or do we want to go further with it? Do we want more regulation of the gas blowers? I'm just sort of curious because I hadn't really heard that come up tonight.
I guess to respond to that, I think the question is, if you find that a suspension doesn't mean the equivalent of losing registration, that's your point of view. And I agree with that policy. And if that's the case, so that suspension really has consequences. It's not just another opportunity for a fine. It means that the homeowner then is eligible for a fine, which I think is a really important piece of this puzzle. So that it encourages compliance after registration. If you get suspended, your homeowners are then at risk. They get a warning, but then the next time they're actually going to pay the fine. So that seems to me an important piece of the enforcement regime that really matters. And if you need an ordinance tweak to make it official, I would certainly be supportive of docket item to do that. If you don't need it, that's great. And I would prefer not to do that. So if that's your sense that that the suspension is the equivalent of not being registered for purposes of the fine structure, then I think that's fine.
Mhm.
But if you need anything else, I would certainly.
Am I correct? You're waiting to hear from the law department?
Yeah.
Like that? Is that right?
Yes, and I don't know,
I can speak to that.
Jen, want to weigh in here? Thank you, Jen, Jen's been very involved in
Yep.
this. She gets involved in all the fun stuff, including leaf blowers. But anyways, if you want to weigh in on that aspect.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
please.
As it stands right now, once the suspension is issued, the fines can be given to the homeowners. So as long as they need to be holding a valid permit and be on good standing on the public list. So once they're suspended, both of those things stop being true. So the homeowner can be issued the fine.
But just to reiterate, because my concern was sort of the opposite, which is notice to the homeowner that the registration is
The warning first and then the fine.
okay.
I don't know who the homeowners are.
I think they're saying if the violation occurs at the
At the
property.
address.
Oh, so only that particular homeowner is notified.
Right.
Not the
Correct.
other
Right.
homeowners.
So the registered landscaper who then doesn't pay his fines and becomes in non-compliance and is considered no longer registered, may perform functions at 5 different homes.
Yeah.
But the 5 homeowners aren't all liable for the violations yet. He would have to commit a violation at each of those 5 homes, for each of the 5 homes to get a warning, and then on a second violation at each of those homes could the homeowner be held responsible, right?
Yeah.
But it's site specific, because you can't really hold the homeowner liable for the contract violation elsewhere. It's only on their site, and you hope that the homeowner then.
Well, then maybe the homeowner then says, hey, I thought you're registered. We are no longer gonna use you, and now there's, there's complications for the landscape. He's losing work and, maybe incentive to register
Well, that's the
and
whole
comply to
idea.
the
I
ordinance.
mean, we're interested in compliance, and again, I wanna, my concern about the other side of the enforcement should not take away from the value of what you all have done. And I think it's a significant improvement, and you gotta give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. Councilor Humphrey.
I was just, again, I had asked the members of the committee in terms of other substantive things beyond the existing policy. Is that something we're interested in? I'm not pushing one way or the other. I'm just trying to genuinely find out, like, I know that's not the docket item before us, but if there were to be interest in that, then we would need a new docket item. And so I'm trying to gauge the level of, do people think this is a reasonable point we've arrived at? Should we be going further? Because that was always the discussion before.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but I think part of the reason for these updates is both to understand how it's working and to investigate whether we need some tweaks. I think the one tweak that was raised tonight was the one that we just sort of validated with the law department, that it seems to be functioning the way we as a committee would like it to function, and perhaps as a council would like it to function. But the question is still out there. Did anyone hear anything else that they think requires an ordinance change?
The only question I have is part of the whole climate policy of the city. At some point, does electrification become feasible for other times of the year, or is it just not available? I just don't know the answer to that. I mean, because the equipment's gotten a lot more sophisticated in terms of the battery capacity and the ability to operate. So I don't know whether cities and towns are moving in that direction just on the equipment side, leaving all the other pieces aside. I don't know the answer to that, but it might be useful to know if you know and hear what's going on.
We need to explore a year-round gas power plant.
Yeah,
And
that
I just need to know what's happening. There isn't.
Yeah, Councilor Humphrey, did you want to weigh in on that?
well, I was just going to say that was the type of question that I was asking is are we saying that this is the ordinance we want to stick with for a few more seasons and see how it goes, or are we ready to move beyond this, or is there no interest in moving beyond this? That's what I'm curious about, because this ultimately the most recent revision to this was more of a compliance and enforcement change to a prior revision, before I was even on the council. And that itself was, a compromise, like with the summer ban versus the rest of the year, that kind of thing. And so I guess I'm asking beyond the question of tweaks, is everyone saying this is the compromise we want to stay at for a while, or are we saying that there's interest in moving beyond this?
As of right now, it seems to me that we've got a program that is, bringing around more compliance is what I'm hearing. Obviously, if we go from $95,000, $92,000 in fines this year down to 60 and compliance goes up, I think we're on the right track. Whether or not then we extend the hours, right, or dates might be one way to look at this as we continue to kind of see success. It makes sense to me to kind of get the program to where we ultimately wanted it. What we have in place today is, the result of several compromises. But it does seem to me like what we've got is working and it's moving in the right direction. Let's see a little bit more of that before we continue to.
I will say the one enforcement piece that's a little tricky is that in the gas-powered leaf blowers, they're 65, and then they're figuring out which is 65 and which is not 65. At least the electrics you're pretty sure, what they are. And, so there is an enforcement rationale for having an electric model as opposed to the gas power in addition to the climate. So I would want to reserve judgment and just see how we can do on the enforcement side, but I don't think we should take off the table the prospect of enhancing enforcement by the modernized equipment option, if that's the case. Again, the city is a consumer of these services, so we have to be sensitive to the city's needs as well as to the homeowner's needs. So I don't want to jump on a particular outcome without a lot of thought about it, but I am interested in what assists the enforcement side of this game as well as the just the operations. So.
Well, and to Councilor Oliver's point, not that I necessarily want to go in the direction of the infamous winter parking ban with the constant date shrinking, but not actually removing the ban. That is a possible option as well here, right? For example, saying that it's now a spring summer ban on gas blowers, or, if we're not ready to go to full year, so I'm just putting that out there, not saying for sure that that's what we should do, but just that that's the type of thing I would like to be having a discussion on, to see what we think about doing that for some of the reasons that Councilor Baker just said. I mean, it's always easier to enforce things that are consistent, but anyway, I know we're not deciding anything on that front tonight, but I didn't want us to just purely discuss the existing ordinance with no discussion of potential substantive changes to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Albright. And let me just quickly say that we've been joined by someone identifying as Councilor Wright, former member of this committee. We miss you, Councilor Wright, but thank you for joining us. Councilor Albright.
I think we need to know, going to a spring, summer, we need to know more about the efficiency of the electric blowers, because it's the spring, fall thing is about the heavy duty work that needs to get done. Not so much that we like electric in the summer, but we don't like it in the spring and fall. I think it was the heavy duty nature of the work. So if electric blowers have got to the point where they can do heavy duty work, get rid of the gas altogether, but I don't think we know the answer to that question yet.
Councilor Albright.
I'm not sure the applicable date, but one argument against moving the summer ban shorter too far into the spring is the idea that, the leave the leaves concept, where if you let your leaves sit, it allows time for the pollinators to hatch out of those stems and wherever they are. And I think it's like a certain number of days over 50 degrees or whatever it is.
No mow May.
No mow May. No
Yeah.
mow May, yeah, and I don't know if they exactly coincide or not, so we want people to be able to do that, and then they still got a heavy leaf load to be able to see folks without being in violation. And if you want to like April 1, that's, I'm sure, too early, maybe May 1, I don't know.
Oh my.
All right, I'm seeing no other comments. Can I get a motion to hold?
So move.
Councilor Baker has moved to hold. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to congratulate Deb Fenimore, Amy Martella, Chuck Edgerhide, and some of the ISP inspectors for, it's a team.
That's great. That's great. It's so much better than it was. I really appreciate it. Committee, we have 2 items left. So let's put- Thank you very much.
But we already
Appreciate
did
it.
something else, and by the time we get-
Item 134-24, the reappointment of Matt Volpe to the Commission on Disability. Any discussion? Anyone want to make a motion on that? Councilor Baker has moved approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that is 5. Jacqueline, I believe. Oh, 6, I'm sorry. The item 135-24, the reappointment of Sandra Lingley to the Commission on Disability. I am happy to move approval of that. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilman Alex, to adjourn, no discussion, thank you, we are adjourned.
Anybody want to act for a turn?
I could chase after it.